Okay, we're on Eduyot, Perek Bet, Mishnah, ninth Mishnah, the second chapter of Masechet Eduyot. This Mishnah is somewhat confusing and complicated, even though it's on its face value very simple. This is a continuation of the words of Rabbi Akiva, Hu Haya Omer, very much like we recognize from Pirkei Avot. The last Mishnah we learned said, Shosha Dvarim Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said three things, halachic things, and then it goes right into Hu Haya Omer. Ma'od Mazgir remembers, or reminds us of Pirkei Avot. Now, the Mishnah is complicated because the first half we understand, and the second half goes really kind of in a different direction, very difficult to understand, and I think I understand why, and hopefully we'll be able to understand it much better. But first we'll understand the way the Bartanura understood it, and then we'll understand it much, much, much better with the help of the Tosefta. The Mishnah says the following, Hu Haya Omer, Rabbi Akiva used to say, Ha'av zoche laben, banoi, ubakoach, ubaosher, ubachochma, ubishanim. Okay, a father, zoche laben, mizakeh, really means mizakeh. He merits for his son, noi, good looks, koach, strength, osher, wealth, chachma, wisdom, ubishanim, and it's years. Okay, where it says the Bartanura, lefisha karov hateva haben liot domeh leteva av. Naturally, it makes sense that the child should naturally be like the father. Vanoi, vakoach, vachachma, vashanim. The four things that we know are, looks and personal physical strength and wisdom and years. Adam zocheh ben mitchilat yitzirato kavitivo. A person merits them the way he's born, meaning it's natural, it's genetic. Ve'osher adam barishon lebanav. And wealth, a person gives over to his son. Okay, and he says, interesting, chachma de'amin and hacha, this wisdom, he has svara hayeshara. Svara hayeshara, I don't know exactly how to translate that, but direct svara, like logical thought, I would say. V'hi ba'adam kefitivo. Person, as we know, you want to call it IQ today. IQ, there's a genetic element to it. Person's thought and logic and understanding is directly connected to what he's given as in divine gifts. Shanim, years, arichut yamim. Okay, and that's long life. Those are years. V'li nira, it seems to me, im adam zocheh havyon lebanim na'im. If a person is merits, he has good-looking children, ba'alei koach, physically strong, ba'alei wise, wealth, and they live long. That's zechut. You want zechut, like one thing that God gives us. Ha'av zocheh ben, it means the merit of the father, right, gives the merit for the child for these five things. Okay, now, and by the way, if we look at the Tosefta, we're going to see the Tosefta here, we see that this is the Tosefta that Chacham disagreed. The Mishnah says, the Tosefta says, Chamisha dvarim ayar Rabbi Akiva doresh kimin agada, b'chamisha dvarim adam zocheh leben. This is like a sort of agada. It's stuck in Tosefta Eduyot, right? Not stuck in, it's inserted, right? That the father merits, inherits over to his children. V'chachamim omrim, Chachamim say, wait a second, ad haperek zachalo. Yes, that works up until the haperek. Haperek means until he reaches the age of majority. It means when he hits 20. Mikan ve'elach, after 20, hu zocheh la'atzmo. And the Tosefta, you can learn it on your own, goes into it in greater details. That's the first half of the Mishnah. Great. And then the Mishnah says, Ubemispara darot lefanav, and in the number of generations before him, v'hu ha'ketz, and this is the ketz. Ketz literally means the end. But ketz is euphemism for the times of the end times, the times of redemption. Shne'emar, as it says, Korei adorot merosh. God is that who reads the generations from the beginning. And then the Mishnah says, Rabbi Akiva says, even though it says, Hashem said to Avraham, in Brit Beit Bitarim. Let's look at Brit Bitarim. We know at Brit Bitarim, Hashem said to Avraham, is like, how do I know that my children are going to inherit me, etc. And then Hashem says, do this really involved process of Brit Ben Bitarim. Take the animals, split them in two, and then you do the Brit, and then this amazing thing happened. And then Hashem said to Avraham the following, Yada Teda, you should just know, you should surely know, your children will be strangers in land not theirs, and they will become slaves, and they will become afflicted 400 years, etc., 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 and then I will redeem them. He says, V'dor rivi'i yashuvu hena, ki lo shalim avona Maria hena, and the fourth generation will return hena, to here. The fourth generation will return because the sin of the Amari will not be complete until then. Chazal said they have a problem. I don't understand. Is it 400 years? arba me'ot shana, or is it dor revi'i? Is it the fourth generation? So Rabbi Akiva also had this problem. So as we'll see, but nonetheless he says afabishan amar ba'avadum ve'inu otam arba me'ot shana v'ne'emar. It also says v'dor revi'i yashuvu hena. So we're a little stuck. What does it mean? Ubi mispar derot lefanav. The way the Mishnah sounds, it sounds like ha'av zocher leben. The father marries to the child, and he said, beauty, strength, wealth, wisdom, shanim, ubi mispar derot lefanav, and the number of generations, v'hu haketz. Meaning the second part of the Mishnah is a continuation of the first part of the Mishnah, and that's how the Bartenura reads it. Okay, ubi mispar derot lefanav, says the Bartenura, pa'amim shekadosh baruch hu mavtiach la'av la'asot tova l'zeh l'dor shlishi u'l'dor revi'i. Sometimes God promises to do a goodness to a person. The father married, he was an amazing man, and Hashem promises or commits to give merit to that child 3-4 generations into the future. And v'hu haketz, and that is the case. What does that mean? The Bartenura says, "Shekatzav hakadosh baruch hu le'oto davar she'yeh lizman ploni u'ledor ploni." That Hashem promised to give to that goodness to that generation and that time. Kumo, as an example of abidum. Like the example of Hashem promising to Abraham that he will save them and that he will inflict them for 400 years, and then the fourth generation will return. So the Bartenura sees in this Mishnah as a continuation. Okay? Now, the problem is it's very difficult to understand. What in the world is Shene'emar Korei Hadorot Mishvishon Afabi Shene'emar, and then even though it says V'abadu V'inu Otam, it's difficult to understand. If you take the time to try to learn this Mishnah in this way, it's difficult to understand. So the first thing we have to do in order to understand this Mishnah, we have a hint here. Okay, it doesn't say V'hu haketz, it says Hu haketz. Right? The Bartenura has already a different language of Hu haketz. And if we look at the Kitvei Yad, we're going to see two fundamental differences. So the first one, we understand these 5 things, and it's actually interesting. Remember, we said that Tosefta said it's 5. So what in the world is number 6? V'hu haketz. So what does it talk about number 6? V'hu haketz. So the first clue we're going to see 2 Kitvei Yad. The Kitvei Yad, this is Ktav Yad Kaufman, one ancient textual witness of the Mishnah. Okay, Hu haya omer ha'av zakal leben benoi bekoach da 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 da. Okay, and then it's ubashanim. Ubemispar hadarot lefanav hu haketz. It doesn't say v'hu haketz. Here it says hu haketz. Ubemispar hadarot lefanav hu haketz, and that translates to mean and the number of generations before him. That is the case. Let's look at a different Ktav Yad Parma. We don't ever know which one of them is actually the legitimate, I would say, text, but we give indications. Here in Ktav Yad Parma, it says, here the beginning is also the same, Chachma B'Shanim. Then it says, Mispar Hadarot Lefanav Hu HaKetz. Totally new topic. The number of generations before him, that is the case. Shene'emar, as it says, Korei Hadarot Meirosha. God is the one who reads the generation before. So if we took off the Mis'ube, and we just read it from, like Ktav Yad Parma, Mispar Lefanav Hu HaKetz, it means something totally different. And we'll see this in, not this Tosefta, but the next one. Rabbi Akiva continued in the Tosefta and said the following, look at the language. Mispar Hadarot Lefanav HaKetz. The number, I'm going to read, let's read the Tosefta and understand it. The number of generations before him, that determines the ketz. The geula, the end of times. Even though days and hours are kechut hasara, like a hair's width, nothing before God. Time doesn't mean anything. Eino moneh ela dorot. God only counts generations. Shenemar, as it says, Korei dorot meirosha. It turns out, if we understand the Tosefta and the Kitvei Hayad, to understand this Mishnah, we have to understand it's really 2 Mishnayot. Rabbi Akiva would say this thing. Great. He would say, a father passes his children these 5 things. And then he said the following. He said, I have a problem because it's, I don't know, what does God care most about? Generations or time? What will bring the case? Said Rabbi Akiva, Mispar hadarot lefanav hu haketz. The number of generations before God, that is the determination of the case, of the Geula. Shene'emar, as it says in Yeshayahu, Korei hadarot me'rosh. God reads the dorot, the generations. Oh, what? Afal pi shene'emar, because even though God said v'avadum v'inu atam arba ma'ot shana, that Hashem said they will be afflicted for 400 years. First of all, everybody knows if you count the years, it wasn't 400 years, and so Chazal turn cartwheels to figure out how to get to 400 from this time, from the time that Hashem said that until Yetziat Mitzrayim. Doesn't really work. Nonetheless, Rabbi Akiva says, I'll tell you the answer. Hashem says for years because that's the amount it's supposed to be. But God said, from the fourth generation, they will return. Because what's really important, and if you look at the Ra'avad, it's also so it's a really beautiful pirush of the Ra'avad. Long pirush. We're not going to read it here on this Mishnah. And the Ra'avad says, okay, okay, even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu sets it in terms of years, right? The goodness and the consolations may be spared the road to that. God makes that dependent upon generations. In essence, it's really interesting. We know Rabbi Akiva, when he lived, we know he lived at the time after the Churban, at the time of the years of the Bar Kochba. And Jews wondered, he wondered, when will the redemption come? Can we win? And Rabbi Akiva believed that they could. And he said, it doesn't depend on years. There's no set time. It depends on the merit of the generation. If our generation merits, then if our generation is worthy, Hashem will bring the merit of the coming of the Mashiach. And that's what he said. Because even though Avraham Avinu said to Avraham 400 years, it wasn't 400 years. The fourth generation, they were meritorious. We pray, may we be meritorious. A beautiful, beautiful Mishnah. You feel the power of Rabbi Akiva as he's fighting the enemies that are surrounding the Jewish people, and they lost. It's terrible. They lost to the Romans. But in the end, Rabbi Akiva's message was, if the generation is meritorious, hu haketz, that will bring the geula, the redemption of the Jewish people. We'll stop here. Dedicated to learning to remember my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Make it a great day.